So I think right at the outset, I want to say that this is an intro and an overview, and not actual training on how to use Efofex. I'm certainly not a kind of guru. I've used it quite a lot, and I know how quite a lot of it works. I certainly don't know how all of it works, but I think also in terms of actually training people and helping people get started with it is a different thing, and we would get through much less. So I'm not going to go too quickly, but I'm going to just sort of go through a whole lot of stuff. Hopefully, if you are using it, you learn a few new tricks. And if you're not using it, then hopefully it kind of whets your appetite to maybe try it. So I think that it was really interesting for me on the FET group. It was like everybody, it sort of almost became a bit of a competition, like, yeah, mine's better than yours. And I don't think, that's really not what I was trying to promote. I just thought that I owed it to any maths teacher to at least make them aware of this application so they can have a look. Right. So when you install Efofex, it basically adds a tab into Microsoft Word. All right. And the two sort of features that I'm going to show you first up are what are called FX draw and FX equation. They're very much integrated. And I'm going to just start with the equation thing. So one would just click to put in an equation. It's pretty intuitive in terms of, one could just type stuff. So for example, one could type 2, if you type a 2 after an x, it'll become x squared. So we might go something like, I don't know, 2x squared plus 7 equals 11. And once we've sort of done with our equation, we literally just click on the green tick and it takes us back into Word, and we kind of carry on. I've actually set up shortcut keys for editing an equation and for creating a new equation. Those are actually Microsoft Word things. They're not Efofex things. So if I've got a shortcut that if I go Alt F, it will kind of edit it. Otherwise, you can click on the edit button and you sort of back in here. All right. Just a few things that are sort of, I think most of it's fairly obvious in terms of if you wanted to do something like 3 over x. Well, let's just say we're doing a hyperbola, y equals 3 over x plus 2, and we wanted that x plus 2 to all be in the denominator. We would just use a bracket. And so on the right-hand side, we've actually got exactly how the thing's going to appear. Whereas on the left-hand side, we've got kind of what we've typed in. Quite a nice feature is that if you're at the end of a line and you go Control D, it just duplicates that line. So I'm just going to show you kind of how I might use that. So if for example I was solving this equation, I could just go Control D to duplicate it. It's just a bit quicker, and I could then say, right, 2x squared equals. I'm actually going to just change this up a bit and make this kind of 19. So now 2x squared would equal 12. And yeah, please excuse my maths if I've made any mistakes here. So x squared would be 6. And then I could, for example, I could type square root of 6, right? And that's obviously the answer. What I could now do, and I often do this, is I actually show that calculation and then I duplicate it again. If you put anything inside squiggly braces, Efofex evaluates it. All right, so that's the actual answer. And it's got various options. You'll see down on the bottom right here, it's got various options in terms of the format. One option is a sort of exact format. And if I'll show you another example of this just now, but if it could simplify, then it would simplify it. But you can also go to a rounded, and you can give a certain, you can choose your number of decimal places. Okay, so just to show you another example, if we had something like x equals, I don't know, 78 over 13. Let's not go with 13, let's go with 11. So, right, we could, at the moment, it's in the sort of rounded mode. But if I scroll through these, I've got various sort of options. I can get it as an exact number. I can also, and there are various codes that you can put inside here. So you can actually type in a rounded thing, or you could convert it to a mixed number kind of any number of things. Just other little things while we're here. CK is a check mark, so in other words, a tick. CR is a cross. We can also do something like this, where we can say, I'm just going to delete all of this stuff just to kind of start with something fresh. So if we had something like x squared minus 4, sorry, x squared minus 4 over, say, 3x minus 6. And I'm just going to duplicate that. And I could then say something like, well, let's actually make that x minus 2, x plus 2. All right. And you'll see it at the moment, it's not sort of doing that exactly as I'd wanted it to, because the brackets weren't as needed to be. I could now go 3 brackets x minus 2, for example. And now on the next line, another sort of command that we've got is cancel, which I don't really like the term, and I'm sure most of you will agree with me, but I can do something like that. All right. And then on the bottom, I can say cancel as well. I always tell my students that if they cancel things, I'll cancel them. But yeah, so we can do that sort of thing, and I always like to insist when they do cancel that they actually show that they've actually divided. Yeah, so that's kind of the equation stuff. It's got quite a lot of nice little bits and pieces. So for example, if you had simultaneous equations, if you put something like this and you put a 1 inside a circle, it puts a 1 inside brackets like that, you can do something like this: 2x plus 3y equals 11, and you can call that one number 2. And then you can refer to them as a kind of equation number 1 and equation number 2. Yeah, it's got all sorts of kind of features. So you can, if you type box, it will box with some brackets, it will actually draw a box, and you can put stuff inside the box. Yeah, I think in many respects it does everything here that something like math type or equation editor does, with the addition of being able to kind of calculate stuff on the fly. So for example, just doing maybe like a sine rule kind of thing. And I just want to talk a little bit about the trigonometry, because if I do sine of, say, 20, it automatically says, oh, it actually kind of makes it into a power. So there's 2 ways around that. One obviously could put a bracket in, okay? The little apostrophe thing to the left of the 1 gives us a degree symbol, all right? So I might have something like 5 over sine 20 equals, and I'm just going to do over here, I'm going to go x over, and I'm going to go sine. Maybe I don't want those brackets, so maybe this is going to be over 45 degrees. So I'm going to go a double exclamation mark. Basically gives almost an invisible space, but it then overcomes that issue. Okay. In fact, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to change this up a bit. Yeah, okay, that's fine. All right. So that's just the one thing with the trigonometry. In the inline calculator, for example, if you wanted to work out, let's just say that x ended up being, and I don't know why it's in school maths we often just talk about sine to the -1 rather than arc sine. So I might type something like this in a memo. All right. If on the next line here you actually wanted to evaluate that, f of x actually uses a sine for arc sine. So in other words, if you had a sine of a half and you put it into squiggly brackets, it would then give you the answer, and you could type a degree sign after that. Okay, it's got all sorts of things, like if you want to underline something, it will kind of underline like that, UL for underline. There is a kind of a cheat sheet. The next piece is the sort of drawing bit, all right? And so one just clicks on FX draw to put in a drawing. And I'm gonna just show you a whole lot of things. So the first thing is that the drawing tools are reasonably intuitive. So for example, if I've drawn a circle, all right, and I now want to draw a line, if I draw a line, it actually sort of says, oh yeah, do you want a tangent kind of thing? Yeah. So and then if I go somewhere else and I draw another line, it will say, actually, do you want those lines to be parallel? Yeah, so it will kind of snap them to be, it'll let me know when they are parallel. Okay. I'm just going to draw a whole lot of sort of stuff here. So again, that maybe they'll draw that as a tangent to there. I can measure an angle of anything that I've drawn, so I can go and measure, and it sort of intuitively snaps and says, do you want to measure that angle or this angle? Once suppose I decide I'm going to measure this angle, all right, I can go and click on that angle, and it's got two at the moment. The way I like the angle with a little arc on it, it's got two little green sizes. I can size the actual size of the arc, but I can also move the that 44 degrees nearer or further away. If I right click on it, I get a whole lot of options. So you can see I can have the 44 degrees without an arc. I can have the 44 degrees outside of the arc. I can actually type in a variable here and say that this is actually going to be theta, all right? And TH, the first couple of letters of sort of Greek words, so TH for theta, BE for beta, AL for alpha, etc. So now I've actually got theta there rather than rather than the actual angle measure. Okay. Just while we're here in terms of drawing, there's a whole lot of kind of drawing tools that one's got. So some of the ones that I quite like this dimension tool. So you can actually say, right, I want to go from here to here and measure the dimension of that line. And then it'll pull away. And you can, again, if you go and click on any object and then right click, you can edit the properties of that. So for example, here you could show the measurement of that line with units, however many decimal places. You can show the measurement. Or you could show some text. Okay, we might just say that this line is called fish, whatever it's called. Okay, and it will then you can choose whether you want that text or the measurement inside the line, outside the line. You've kind of got above the line. You can change any aspect of it in terms of the appearance of the whole thing. Okay. Another quite cool little one, which I'll just show you, is the sort of matchstick. So you can actually draw some matchsticks. Quite nice for those puzzles that those number pattern kind of questions. But again, if you've drawn a matchstick, you can actually and you right click on it, you can choose. There's any number of different sort of designs of matchstick. And as is the case on most of these screens, if you've actually selected something, and you can say set that as the default. So now whenever I come in and I sort of go into the matchstick tool, it will give me that particular matchstick. But you'll see, even as I draw a matchstick, it's saying, well, do you want it kind of do you want it parallel to there? Do you want it perpendicular? It's kind of intuitive in terms of the way it operates. I'm going to just select all of the stuff and press delete. Anything that you've drawn. So for example, if we've drawn, let's just draw a couple of lines here. All right. So I'm just going to show you again. If we draw another line here, you'll see it actually, it's giving me the option of it like an angle bisector in there. All right. And because I created that as an angle bisector, it's kind of dynamic. And as I move that middle line will remain an angle bisector. Okay. Any object that you've drawn, you can go and right click on it and you can edit the properties of it. So you can change how thick the line is, the color of the line, all those sorts of things. You can also put embellishments onto the line. So for example, if this line's parallel to another line, you can say I want a parallel marker there of a certain size, and it'll put that parallel marker in the middle of the line. Sometimes, as you know, that actually isn't what you want on a diagram. So you do have the option of moving it along the line. I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger so you can see it. And you also have the option of reversing the arrow. So that they're both facing the same direction if you've got another parallel line thing somewhere else. Likewise, you could edit the properties of this line, and in the middle you could put two little marks to show that it's equal to a line, whatever. Okay, quite a nice feature, and I'm just going to quickly show you a sort of application. But so I'm going to just draw a triangle here. Really important that if you're drawing, I'm now drawing another line, okay, and I'm going to go. You'll notice it sort of snaps onto the end of that line, so that those two lines are now sort of joined, and I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to go from here to there. So what I'm saying is that this thing is a triangle. If I go and drag it around, it remains a triangle. What you can now do is you can put dividing points onto any object, a circle or a line. So I'm going to add some dividing points, and it says how many kind of divisions do you want? So suppose I want, let's go with 5 divisions actually. I'm not going to add points to the end of the line, and I'm going to make this marker slightly bigger just for the purposes of the demonstration. All right, so what it's done, it's divided that line into 5. I'm now going to take this line over here. I'm also going to divide it into 5. So I'm going to add some dividing points. I'm not going to add them to the end of the line. You can, but I'm not going to. And I'm going to make those a bit bigger as well. Okay. And so now I can join up, say, for example, this point over here and this point over here. Not surprisingly, it started telling me that these lines are going to be parallel. All right. If you now don't want these points anymore because you've created your sort of proportional intercept thing where this is 2 as to 3 or whatever it's going to be, you can just select kind of around those points and press the delete key. So you can get rid of them, and you can even get rid of that one and that one and that one. Yeah. And so you've now got, you know, your, okay, I've deleted the line, which I didn't want to do, but okay, so quite nice if you can kind of divide a line up like that. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to delete all of that. I'm going to show you that you can kind of, there's a whole lot of options here in terms of graphing and Venn diagrams, etc. I'm just going to quickly show you a few of them. The first one I'm going to show you is a number line. So you can put in a number line. You can, again, if you right click on it, you can adjust any single aspect of this number line. You can change the, you know, how bold it is. Yeah. So in other words, you can make it like a bolder line, like a 3-point line. We can make it red. And if at any stage I click on set as default, then that will always be the number line that I get. Right. Yeah, that looks good. What I can now do is I can also show a range of numbers on here. So for example, I could go square bracket -2 semicolon 3 round bracket. Okay. And what it'll do is it'll actually put that, yeah, that on there. Obviously now it's for a solution for an inequality. Okay. So that's the number line. I'm going to press delete on that. I'm going to show you the Venn diagram tools. So there's a 2-circle and a 3-circle Venn diagram. I'm just going to click on 3-circle. And if you hold down shift, it constrains it to a square. All right, now I can go and I can actually, if I right click on it, it gives me boxes to put in all the sort of numbers that I might want. So I might have like a 56 here and a 12 here, etc. And it'll put those in every single element. So for example, if you want that font to be Arial as the IEB requires, then you can change it to Arial. And again, if you click set as default, then in future these will be Arial. And then obviously you can, at any stage, you can go and put labels onto something. And the labels are now totally consistent with everything that happens in equations. So for example, if you went x plus 3 over 2, all right, it'll type it in as an equation. Okay, not that you would want to do that, I don't think, on a Venn diagram, but hopefully you get the idea. And I don't know if Margie Dwyer is online, but she did ask me just to talk about the tree diagram functionality. It's not. Yeah, it's not maybe as nice as one would like it to be, but you can choose the sort of the construction of your tree. You do have the ability to sort of change up the space, right? And if you put, I'm actually going to go with a 2 and a 3. If you put in add probability to branches and add cumulative probabilities, what it does is it just splits the probabilities equally. In other words, it'll put a half here and a half here and a third on each of these branches. Okay. And you can show the probabilities as fractions as well. Right. So there's the sort of the cumulative probabilities of this Venn diagram, of this tree diagram rather. It's not as functionally rich as one might want it to be, but I found it a useful starting point. Now what I would do if I wanted to edit it, I would just click on it, right click and ungroup it. All right, so now any of these elements I could go and actually edit. So I could actually sorry, struggling to select this half. Yeah, all right. Oh, sorry, yeah, no, I actually know, I know why. So there's actually a line here, and this half is kind of an embellishment on that line. So if I edit the properties, we'll actually see that the text of a half is written in there. Okay, so I could change this to say 7/11. Okay, so you can go and, yeah, that's the tree diagram tool. Okay, I still think it's a lot quicker than drawing it in Word. Okay, and then just going to see if there's anything else I wanted to show you here. There's lots of things. There's things like, for example, Pascal's triangle. So you can put in Pascal's triangle. Again, if you go and right click on it, you can say, right, I want, how many rows do I want? Well, maybe I want 8 rows, and it will then kind of draw the rest of the thing for you. So there's a whole lot of things like that. There's also gallery images. So you can, for example, this is the one I was using most recently. If you want a kind of an image like that maybe for a 3D trig problem, you can kind of just go and draw that. And there's a whole host of those gallery images that are available to you, cylinders and various prisms and things. You can actually add to the gallery yourself. You'll see there's all manner of things here. So there's polygons, all sorts of things. Just while we're talking about polygons, that is one of the sort of, just in terms of a drawing tool, you can just say, I want a regular polygon, and you can either draw it by center and radius, or you could draw it by just an edge. So for example, there's a polygon, it defaults to a pentagon, but if we right click on it, edit the properties, I can say, actually want, say, 22 sides. Okay, and then it will draw it for me because it's dynamic. I can obviously, if I go and change the length of the side, it will just size the thing. 22 is probably typically excessive of me. 8 might be kind of a bit better, but really nice to sort of be able to construct things. And yeah, as I said, you'll notice if I go even on this, if I just go towards the middle of the thing, it actually says down in the bottom left there, it says that's the midpoint of that thing. So for example, now I've got that. If I go and select my octagon, all right, and I change the side length, that remains at the midpoint of that thing. Okay, at any stage, I just press the green arrow and I'm back in my Word document. I just want to show you something here, and I'm just going to quickly get an image. Okay, so that's the Michael House color logo. I can show you how I did that as a shortcut if you would like me to. But what I want to show you is that which I think is quite cool is that the Efofex drawing has actually got a transparent background, so you can actually, it can kind of overlap like that without taking out the USE of House. Okay, which I think is quite nice. And again, that diagram, suppose that's a geometry diagram in an exam paper, that's in the paper. It's not stored as a separate file, which it might have been if you'd drawn it somewhere else and taken a screenshot, and you have to save all these files. If at any stage you want to go to edit it, you just click on edit, and you're back in here and you're editing it. So everything's resident in your Microsoft Word document. Yeah, Efofex runs on Mac and on Windows, just in case I'm sure there are Mac users out there listening. And then yeah, so now what I'm going to quickly just get into now is the graph drawing. All right, so kind of function graph. So I'm just going to go to there, and it puts in a set of axes. These are actually my default axes. If we right click, we can go and type in functions. So, and we can type them in a variety of ways. So we can type it in. It doesn't have to be explicitly defined. We could type in 2x plus 4y equals 8. We could also type in, say, y. Well, let's do f of x equals x squared plus, okay, x squared plus 2x. Notice I typed xx, and it's just gone with x. It's gone like that. Now it's drawn those two. If I kind of hover around in here, it actually says that's the point of intersection. Do you want that point of intersection? Do you want this point of intersection? So it's intuitive in terms of y intercepts, x intercepts. Any of those things, if you actually want that there, you just right click and say add the annotation. All right, and so it's now said, okay, that's the point of intersection, which is a fairly hectic point of intersection. But again, you can right click on it and you can edit it, and it's all so you might not want it to say point of intersection, right? You might want it to just say that, and you can delete that and kind of edit accordingly. You can have anchors and pointers to that point, etc. Any number of things. In terms of the graph drawing stuff, it's got lots and lots of functionality. So if I click on it, you'll see that I can go, there's sort of an integral mode, and I could go and I could actually go kind of from here to here or whatever, and get that integral. If I go and hover over it, it actually has the actual value of that integral. If I go and right click on it and say edit the properties of that integral, I can actually choose where I want to go from. So for example, I might actually go from, say, -2 to 0. I've got Efofex set up with commas, all right? But now I could also go between these two functions. So in other words, I could go from the straight line, rather than going to the x-axis, I could go to the x squared there. Okay, and now you'll see it's actually shaded kind of just that piece. Once again, when you're happy with your diagram or your graph, whatever it is, you just click on the green arrow, the green tick rather, and there it is in your sort of Word document. You can go and size it or whatever you want to do, drag it around, put it wherever you want to put it. In terms of the controls over the axes, etc., you've got unbelievable control. So on the axis, you can change the axis label, you can change the font of the label, you can change the font of the scale, you can change the scale, you name it, you can kind of do as you please. All right. I do just want to show you one thing here, which trips up quite a lot of people. I'm just going to delete everything here, and I'm going to put in another graph. Actually didn't quite delete everything. Should have deleted everything. I'm going to put in another graph here, and I'm now going to try and draw a trig graph. All right, so I'm going to draw y equals sine x. Okay, and if I say okay, it's not looking too bad. It's drawn in radians. All right, so if I go and right click and I go to the function properties, I can change that to degrees. All right, and now it's looking rather strange because we're only seeing the first 10 degrees. So I'm now going to go to my scales, and I'm going to make the scales from, say, 0 in here. So I could actually type pi. All right, if I was doing the radian thing, and I could use increments or fractions of pi. I'm just going to go from 0 to 360. All right, and I'm going to go from -1 to 1. Okay, now when I say okay, it's like done something absolutely bizarre and people tend to panic. But if it's actually done exactly what we asked it to do, the default setting on scales is to have equal aspect. So what we've now got is we've got 360 on the sort of horizontal scale and only 2. So if I say free, then it actually will, sorry, let me just see what I've actually done now.
You put
yeah.
236.
Yeah, thank you. All right. It's still not looking great. I'm not sure exactly. -1 to 1. Also, on my scales here, I should probably go to say 90 and maybe 45. Okay, so now we've got a slightly more sort of normal looking sine graph. We can, yeah, as I said, can do any sort of number of things in terms of the appearance of it. If you just draw, I'm actually going to just draw another graph rather than a sine graph now. So I'm just going to do one more. If I draw something like y equals, let's say 2 to the x minus 4, right? And there it is. If I go onto that function, onto its properties, I can show asymptotes, vertical asymptotes, but I can also show other asymptotes. So now it actually shows that horizontal asymptote. If I go and right click on it, I can add that annotation, right? And again, I might not want it to actually say horizontal asymptote. I could just go and take that out and just have the equation with that line. And any of these things you can drag them around, put them exactly where you want them on your actual axes. You can choose whether you're going to show the scale, all right, and the ticks, all right. So you can decide you're not going to show. Obviously, if you try to get them to find the equation of a graph or whatever, you don't necessarily want to show too many points. So I've turned off the scale and the ticks on the horizontal on the x-axis. Okay, so that's all kind of function stuff. The next little piece that I want to show you is the statistics module. So let me just delete that. I'm just going to delete that as well. All right, okay. I'm just going to very quickly do that again. So I'm going to create some data. So let's go with exactly what we had before. And I'm going to ask for quick graph, and I'm going to go with the stem and leaf, as I said previously. I'm going to just resort those, reverse the stems again. Right. So suppose that's the data that I actually give the students. Okay. And now I want them to draw a box and whisker for this data. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of that because that's a data set. Okay. I'm now going to go and edit the second one. And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to change this graph and I'm going to say, rather draw us a box and whisker. Okay. Like this. And I'm going to right click on this to sort of look at the box and whisker thing here. And I'm going to say, hide the graph. Okay. So what it's going to do now, it's going to, when I go back to here, it's got the sort of grid, if you like, for them to draw the box and whisker for this particular data set. When I'm doing my memo, I can just literally go back in here. I can edit it and just say, actually, just show the graph. Okay, and exactly the same works on the function drawing tool. So I can actually have that. So it does. This thing does. It does all of it. It does ogives. You can group data. Let me. The very last thing I want to show you, and I think it's a really exciting piece, but it's not a piece that I know very well myself, is a thing called what they call multi-docs. And the whole idea behind a multi-doc is that you can actually have you can set parameters into your equations or your drawings, for example. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a really, really simple example. So we're going to put in an equation here. I'm going to create a parameter. Now, there's various ways you can create a parameter. Parameters always start with a $sign. So I'm going to have like $A, and I can have a range, and my range could be, say, from -5 to 5 in increments of 1. So what that will do is it will select a random number for that parameter A. And obviously, because given that it's in whole numbers, there's going to be 11 variations. Okay. The other thing I can do as a parameter, sometimes you don't want, for example, you don't want 0 to come up as a parameter. So you can actually have a list, and you can specify, right, I want -3, I want -2, I want 8. All right. And you'll notice that on the right-hand side, it's updating the whole time with the number of variations. So with those two parameters, I've kind of got 33 different questions that students might get asked. Okay, so those are my parameters. Now I can go and type in an equation, for example, $A, and it's actually substituted that value. So maybe $AX plus $B equals, I'm just going to go with 234. Okay, sorry, I didn't type in $B. All right, so there's an equation, okay? And if I click regenerate, it'll just regenerate that equation. All right, so now that's a kind of a question in the test, right? And on the right-hand side here, I'm just going to do the corresponding solution. So I'm just going to say solution. All right, so I'm going to put in another equation now. And you might remember I said AX plus B equals 234. So obviously $AX, let me just make all this a bit bigger for the purposes of demonstration. $AX plus, so $AX will equal 234 minus $B. All right, and then X will obviously be equal to 234 minus $B over A. That's it, over $A. Make sure that that's in the right place. Remember, we can Control D to duplicate, all right? And we can put it into braces, so it'll actually work it out for us. Okay, so now at the moment, you're probably wondering, like, what's happening here? This doesn't seem to be linked to this. I've got some parameters defined in this equation, and they're not defined in this equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that. I'm going to say copy parameters, and I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to say paste those parameters. Okay, and so now it generates the solution basically to that particular equation. If I now click on one of these things and I say regenerate, all right, it does want the document saved. Okay, so I'm just going to say save. It will actually recreate that question. Okay, and now we got a new question with a new solution. Just to show you one application of that I did earlier, because it's quite cool. It generates across the various applications. So I did this one over here where I've got this on the left here as an FX draw thing where I've drawn a line between two random points. And over here on the right-hand side is the solution for the equation of that line. Okay. And if I go to Efofex here and I click on one of these things, I can say regenerate. All right. It takes not long, it takes a couple of seconds. All right. But it now creates a new line, new points, and a new solution. So it actually will generate dynamic questions. And you can even have your obviously your model answer in a different document, and it'll generate the solution for you. I'm going to stop there because it's probably been a little bit like trying to drink from a fire hose. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to just take kind of any questions or comments, or can it do this or can it do that, and if so, I can try and show you. Yeah, I hope that's been useful. As I said, it probably was a little bit like trying to drink from a fire hose, and it was never meant to be a training session. If you have Efofex and you want some help with it, I'm really happy to jump online with some people and sort of take some specific queries around it.